Good morning. This is Wednesday, January 28th, 2026. You're listening to Weather with Enthusiasm. This is your weather enthusiast, Simcha Lefton, with a developing situation that could become serious for the Chicago area, especially for Friday and Shabbos. A week ago, most eyes were on other systems, and the lake effect potential was not getting much attention. On this podcast, we did talk about last Sunday's setup, and that event actually delivered. This time, the setup is even more intense, and the National Weather Service is now highlighting it. For Chicago, this is a setup that feels more like Buffalo. We say all the time that Chicago usually does not get true lake effect snow. We get lake enhancement. We don't often get significant true lake effect snow. But this winter, we've already had multiple legitimate lake effect events. We might be setting up for a third with a longer duration than what we usually see here. The basic ingredient is the lake temperature versus the 850 MB temperature. For organized lake effect snow, there's a key threshold. You generally want at least 23 degrees Fahrenheit or 13 degrees Celsius difference between the lake surface temperature and the temperature around 850 MB, roughly 5,000 feet up into the atmosphere. In this weekend, that contrast looks strong. The lake surface temperatures near Chicago are being reported around the upper 30s. Some are between 36 and 38 degrees. Now realize that's 12 miles out because the first 12 miles, it's actually ice. It's 32 degrees. So meanwhile, the temperatures at the 850 MB look to be around 0 degrees, give or take a couple degrees. And that's a very healthy temperature difference, and it supports moderate to potentially heavy lake effect snow, at least at times. The National Weather Service is already talking about a high snow ratio, potentially 25-1 or even higher. And that's fluffy, powdery snow that could pile up fast when a band sits over you. And what about that ice near shore that we just spoke about? So there's also ice near the shoreline, the first several miles. That could matter. We actually said 12 miles. And that ice could reduce the lake's ability to feed the snow bands. But last weekend, the ice did not prevent significant accumulations near the lake. So for now, it looks like the ice may have only a limited impact. The biggest driver is the wind direction and the fetch. And here's the heart of it, is the wind direction. We may have northeast winds running down the full fetch of Lake Michigan, meaning air travels across the entire length of the lake, it picks up moisture, and then it dumps it on shore. One of the most important things to monitor for lake effect is not just the surface wind, but it's the wind around the 850 MB pressure level. That's about 5,000 feet up. If those winds are lined up off the lake for hours and hours, the lake effect mechanism stays on, even if the snow turns on and off in bursts, but the mechanism remains on. And right now, the signal is for a long duration onshore flow starting Friday morning and continuing through much of Friday night, and Saturday, with the band likely wobbling and shifting. That wobble is what determines who gets the big totals. It could favor the Chicago shoreline, or it could slide into northwest Indiana, or do both at different times. What I think the evolution is going to end up looking like, and here's a reasonable way that this could unfold, is that Friday morning into Friday afternoon, a more intense burst or bursts as the bands come on shore, potentially heavy at times. That's when you look at the European computer model, you'll see that's when they line up. Both the surface winds and the winds 5,000 feet above the surface are both northeast. So that's why I think we might see heavier precipitation during that time. Friday night, still snow showers, but possibly more variable as the band shifts and reorganizes itself in Indiana. And over there, you see the winds northeast at the 5,000 feet up into the atmosphere, but the winds are no longer northeast on the surface, according to the European computer model. So I think the precipitation will continue on and off, just they won't have that same intensity. And then Saturday, another window for a more dominant band to develop. That's when the highest totals could happen if the band becomes more stationary. And the National Weather Service has mentioned that for our area, there's no reason to believe that Saturday would be more intense than Friday. I mean, Friday we have a large difference in temperatures between 5,000 feet up, and the surface, we have the surface northeast winds. We have the 5,000 feet up northeast surface wind, northeast winds. Everything's lined up on Friday. On Saturday, that could happen again, or it could happen again here. It seems like Friday night, the surface winds are not going to be from the northeast, and on Saturday it's questionable whether the surface winds, at some times of the day, the surface winds likely will be from the northeast. The National Weather Service has a slightly different story. They're not expressing this with the same confidence, but you have to realize that we spoke about this last week and it came through on Sunday. I'm just focusing on the 5,000 feet above the surface. So we have the National Weather Service is leaning toward the most organized band developing later Friday into Saturday, and there's still uncertainty about whether the bullseye favors Illinois or Indiana. That uncertainty is normal. Lake effect is a narrow target event. But the snow totals, and this is why the range matters, given our recent lake effect events, it's reasonable to talk about several inches in favored areas. And it's also reasonable to say some localized totals could reach double digits if a band locks in. We've had a couple events which have been in the 4 to 10 inch range. This past weekend was 4 to 10 inches. And then in January 2022, it also was 4 to 10 inches. The thing over here, though, is that this is a longer duration event. So there's reason to believe that it could be more than 4 to 10 inches. 4 inches on the lower end sounds about right, but the upper end, if you get a band over the same area for the whole time or almost the whole time, you would end up with more than 10 inches. Would it be double? Those are the questions that one would have to deal with. Because the duration here is long, roughly 36 to 48 hours, the potential, an upper end outcome cannot be dismissed. The question is simply, where does the band park? So the East Coast, the ideal synoptics, we go to the East Coast, but still a track problem. We're going to switch to the East Coast now. So quickly on the East Coast, the pattern is extremely favorable for a coastal storm to develop and intensify offshore. Arctic air interacting with the warm Gulf Stream that could lead to rapid deepening, a bombing-type storm with very strong winds and heavy snow in the right places. But multiple National Weather Service offices are stressing the same thing. The track is still uncertain, and small shifts can mean major city hit or brush and miss. Some guidance keeps the heaviest snow offshore while still producing strong winds, especially for eastern coastal areas. Our final word for Chicago. For Chicago, the lake effect setup is the main local story. It's the kind of forecast where high-resolution models will help as we get closer, but the best early signals come from the wind alignment, the temperature contrast, and the duration. So snow lovers may have something to watch closely, but for everyone, this is also a safety forecast. When lake effect bands hit, they can create rapidly changing travel conditions. That's especially true in bitter cold with powdery snow. So stay safe, stay warm. I'll keep watching the band placement as the high-resolution guidance comes into range. Thank you for listening to Weather with Enthusiasm. Have a wonderful day and have a wonderful week.